On Thursday, May 18th, a week prior to the protest, Wendy Indris, the vice president of student affairs, sent an email to all the students titled "A Talk with George." In this email, she details the purpose for this meeting, and I quote, "You might have heard that some disturbing messages were posted on a closed Facebook group. Some students found the messages to be biased and harassing. Others have said that they believe the messages were intended to be incendiary. The ensuing discussion on Facebook became hostile. This came to the attention of the police when one of the students participating in the exchange reported to campus police that they had been threatened and feared for their safety." That night, a letter was posted to Facebook and all around the campus that reads, "To whom it may concern, so all y'all." On Friday, George will hold a Silence the Black People session over the lunch hour in the Longhouse, and we will not join him there. We've already voiced our experiences over this year, and Wendy and George have made it obvious they don't care about how recent events are affecting the student body. They are making an effort to diminish our voices and take control of the situation they refuse to acknowledge until it began to tarnish their reputation. The incidences described below are part of this year's struggle and a cyclical issue in which Evergreen has consistently refused to listen and engage in critical dialogue surrounding race, and refused to make radical progress on becoming the college it advertises itself as being, highlighting Evergreen's complicity in the cultural failings of the United States. On Sunday night, May 14th, 2 black students were accused of threatening the non-black man of color in the greenery around dinner time. What was labeled as a threat was actually a question from a black student asking the non-black man of color when he was going to stop antagonizing black students. This may have been done loudly, but not aggressively, unless you find black bodies as inherently aggressive. I was fortunate to gain an interview with this non-black man of color. During this interview, which I present to you now, he describes his position in these events. How big is race in your identity?
It's not. It's not even a thing. I've never put race ahead of anything. Like, race was always an afterthought. I mean, with my mom is definitely not white. She never has race as a part of anything. None of our family does. The only time I really hear it is, when I'm with my dad and he's Native, and that's occasionally when he talks about, like, yeah, we're Native American, that kind of thing. But at no point has it ever been a defining part of us.
What about Evergreen?
At Evergreen, it's huge, and that's what I don't like, is that they expect me to act a certain way because of my race, and they expect me to know certain things because of my race, and I really don't appreciate it because it makes me feel uncomfortable.
Do you see why they do that? Do you have an idea why
they do it? Because they believe that people share the same stories of, racial tension and issues along those lines, when really I just don't see that happening. They just go, well, if you're this race, you must share the same thing. And so they'll pair you together.
And you'd rather be paired together
with people who I get along with and I connect with, rather than somebody who looks like me.
Where do you think this attitude comes from? Is it from the students or from...
It's from the faculty. I feel like students are afraid to speak like that just because they know that there are, things that are okay and aren't okay to say. But the faculty will actively come out with, anti this or anti that type of speech rather than how we fix it. And so it fosters a really hateful mentality. And rather than keeping open-mindedness and discourse throughout the school, people have very set beliefs and won't change those.
When did this trouble start for you
then? I mean, throughout the year it was pretty consistent, but it got really bad once I made that Facebook post.
So what was this Facebook post?
Okay, so I was reading on Facebook, and it said, hey, people of color students, we are trying to have a class that's mainly people of color, brown and black, called MediaWorks, where we can learn about our roles in media, where we are targeting a different audience than usual. And what I did, with the help of a friend, was take the exact same post and just switch the race in it and the class in it, just to show that if you can say this about, this race, why can't you say it about this race? And so we put white instead, and then uploaded it, and then 300 something comments later that the entire school was not happy.
In the previous school year, a similar event occurred when a host of All Lives Matter flyers were posted on campus and summarily taken down by the Bias Incident Response Team. On October 7th of 2015, Naima Lowe explained why All Lives Matter is problematic for her.
I personally experience that response is violent, right? Because it's somebody trying to say, I'm asserting my life, right? I'm asserting my dignity. I'm asserting my capacity to just walk out my house and do what I need to do without getting shot, right? And other people just not being able to hear it. I respond to that as violent.
So what was the response then towards you?
Really negative. I had people threatening to beat me up. I had people saying that my parents should have beat me. I had people saying that I was a fragile white boy. And then I had others saying that I was a person of color that just wants to be white, and I don't act like people of color should. And then there was one event when I was in the greenery, and someone came up, stuck the hands on the table, got like this far from my face, and started yelling at me. And they were asking, "Are you going to stop being disrespectful?" And I asked, and I said, "Well, what do you mean by disrespectful?" And their response was, "Are you going to stop being disrespectful?" And I'm like, "I need you to tell me what you mean by that." And they were yelling. I was calm throughout the entire thing, and when they wouldn't respond, I'm like, then no, I won't stop being disrespectful because you won't answer.
So you went to the police services.
Yes.
And what did you do? What did you do there?
I just told them the events that happened, and I said, this was the person who was yelling at me. This is what was happening. The greenery staff said not to call. And then I said that my RA watched when, as an RA, you weren't supposed to do stuff like that.
Your RA was in that group of people?
My RA was in the greenery, but the group of people went and sat with my RA. Yeah, because when I remember leaving and seeing all of them at one table. And so, yeah, and then what happened after was the other students were called in. This was after we left, and they had to go in and, give their confessions. And they like to say they were detained, but on one of the students' Facebook page, there's a video of what happened there, and at no point was there any detainment. It was a group of what looked like 30 students inside of police services hanging out, and one of the students that supposedly was detained and wasn't allowed to use the restroom or leave was walking freely about in the lobby, just chatting it up with people. And then on top of that, Jamil, as an RA, is not supposed to be part of any of this. You weren't supposed to walk around with a bat. You weren't supposed to insult students. You weren't supposed to do anything that is against the code of conduct. But
I did not know Jamil was an RA.
Yeah. At one point, Jamil laughed at me and started to raise their voice at me, and then I got upset, and the response was, "What, you don't like when Negroes yell at you?" And then started laughing at me. Yeah, and as they were my RA in the common room. And then I get told that I am some sort of race traitor, or that I hide behind my light skin privilege because I am not siding with the students how I want. And that's something that just blows my mind, because I don't feel like behavior like this towards anything is acceptable, especially when you're trying to specifically target a race. I don't feel like that's an acceptable thing to do. And for me, because I didn't side with, the group that looks the most like me, I'm now a racist.
There was a meeting on a Friday before the protests that I heard you were at, and
Yep.
It had to do with this.
Yep.
What was that meeting?
I sat in, and it was just, issues, and the students that, had the issue decided to boycott it. So I'm like, I will go in, I'll give my side of the story and talk it out. And I talked it out and said, it's really unfair that students are acting the way they are towards other students because of this. And, I gave my side of the story. I just talked very casually. And then after that, I kind of got a told no from administration because they're like, we told you not to go to those just in case students that you have no contact orders with are there, except the students actively boycotted it, put it on Facebook, and then handed out flyers that they weren't going. So I said I should be safe to go, and I was still, reprimanded for doing that.
What's a no contact?
No contact orders means you can't be within, I think it's 100 feet of the other person. I signed something that just said, you can't go to these because these students could possibly be there, but they didn't do anything like that towards the other students. So the other students could hold 400-person lockdowns of the library, but I wasn't able to go watch, a lecture about entrepreneurialism.
This other group can assault, can hold hostages, can threaten.
Yes, they can literally break the law, but I can't go to campus events. If this were any other school, if you literally held people hostage, you would get in trouble because that's breaking the law. But they aren't even getting in trouble for conduct violations. And it doesn't make sense to me.
Why do you think that these people at Evergreen make race such a big deal?
To help them have some sort of moral superiority. Because if you go and you are a white student and you're active in all of the Black Lives Matter protests and all of this stuff, it makes you feel good inside because you're doing something to make change rather than actually looking and say, how do I go and fix this racist issue? They go, I went and walked with these people, so now I feel better about myself. When really it's not fixing anything.
I've been pondering this. This is what I'm coming down to. It's like there are people who are looking for solutions, and then there are people who are looking for problems. And
Yes.
It seems like these people are really, really good at finding problems.
Yeah. Rather than looking for a solution, I totally agree with you. There are students that aren't doing anything to benefit them. There are students that walk around and all they do is say F you, Keave, and then insult other students for not protesting rather than going, hey, we want to accept you into our movement, help us try to end racism. They go, we're going to insult you just because you're you, or we're going to punch you in the face, or we're not going to listen to you talk. And with the people who protested on campus when the riot police were there.
Patriot Prayer.
Yeah, there you go. They were in downtown Olympia, and I was curious. So I'm like, let's go see what they're like. And I went and talked with them, and they weren't saying anything horrible. The only people I had problems with were the Baptists there, because they were really bigoted. But the free speech, movement, they were really friendly. If you talk to them, they'd want to talk. They're like, we like Trump because of this, And then a lot of them were actually people of color. And so it just went against what everyone was saying about them being a bunch of racist, sexist, because there were women and people of color all within the movement.
There was a far-right rally that was not by libertarian conservatives, but I've been doing a lot of documentation. I've been working on this kind of research for 30 years, and these were Nazis from Portland.
And so they were friendly too if you just, sat down and wanted to talk with them. But the people at Evergreen never took time to do stuff like that. They just went hostile. Discourse was never an option. It was just always fighting.
Well, if race isn't an issue, you're now racist. That's what.
Yeah, that's I totally agree with that. I feel like it's something Ron Paul said, but he said, racism is being carried by the race mongers that are always like, let's bring up race, and that's what keeps racism going. There are certain parts of the nation that are still really racist, but at the same time, in places like here where we are, moving away from, having race be everything, when you have these people in a state like this that's really progressive, it sends everything backwards.
I'm going to stop this then.
Sweet.